was it like growing up black or as African American?
Well, it was pretty much the same, I guess, wherever you grew up, except when I was growing up in the 50s and the 60s, everything was pretty segregated. I went to a black elementary school, I went to a black high school, I went to a historically black college, and I still go back to that college every 5 years now. Of course, there were white students there, but it was predominantly black, and it still is. Growing up, everything, as I said, was segregated, and I'm 63, so when I was growing up in my hometown, like they had separate places for you to sit in a restaurant. I remember my first bus ride with my mother from the country into town, and the buses were segregated then. You had to sit in the back of the bus and so forth. So it was pretty much like that. We didn't go to school with white kids. They had their school and we had our school. In this town of 2,000 people, we had a black high school and we had a white high school. Our school went from first grade to 12th grade. We didn't even have kindergarten when I was in school. But the white school, they had a separate elementary school and middle school, and then they had a high school, just like we did. We oftentimes worked with white kids, but we didn't socially do things together. North Carolina didn't have a lot of the racial strife and violence and things like that that were going on in places like Mississippi and Alabama. The University of North Carolina, for example, had admitted African American students, I think, as early as 1951 or 52. So our governor wasn't standing in the door of the administration building like happened at the University of Mississippi and George Wallace at the University of Alabama when they wanted to go to school. And of course, I told you, I didn't go to those schools. I went to an historically black school. So white students, if they applied there, they were admitted and nobody cared that they were white. So that was part of that. But by the same token, people still lived in different neighborhoods. They tended to develop their own neighborhoods. And when I was in Durham, one of the finest neighborhoods was called Emory Woods, which was near the campus. And in that neighborhood, the black houses were equivalent to white houses anywhere else in town. They just didn't live together, but they had the same quality of housing. They just built, nice, expensive housing because they had the money to do that. They just didn't do it in neighborhoods where there were whites. But that has changed too.
How has the civil rights movement changed you?
When I was a student in college, and as I said before, I'm 63 years old. So I went to college in 1964, and that was the height of the civil rights movement. And at that time, we became very, very aware of what some of the issues were. We became even more aware. We knew that discrimination existed, but going to college was the first time that I saw young people in my age group trying to do something about it. And so I was involved in that to some extent. I actually participated in demonstrations. I remember I was a senior in college when Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. And the college that I went to is in Durham, North Carolina. It's called North Carolina Central University. And we got together with students at Duke University, which is also in Durham, and the University of North Carolina, which is in Chapel Hill, and that's 11 miles from Durham. We all got together and did a joint demonstration downtown in Durham that particular year because Dr. King had been assassinated. And in keeping with his tradition and his beliefs, that it was a nonviolent demonstration.
What would you say has changed the most over the years?
Here in Iowa?
Yes.
Oh, let me see. I would say from an education standpoint, I would say that the biggest change that I've seen is in the integration of schools. because now all kids go to integrated situations. White kids, Asian kids, Hispanic kids, African American kids are all part of the same school. They've done away with what we call segregated attendance centers. Before I moved to Fort Dodge, Pleasant Valley had a school, and that school is where Calvary Church is now, and it was primarily black students who went there. The State Department said that community school districts could not do that. They had to mix the kids up with the other kids in the community, so they did away with that school, and a lot of school districts have done that, and that is probably one of the major changes I've seen in education. I've also seen a big drop in the student population because there just aren't as many parents having as many kids as they used to, and also because of that, a lot of schools have closed, so we get integration that way as well. But we have less than 500,000 students in Iowa public schools going to school now, and that number is dropping every year, so that's another major change. A third change would be, I think, in the economic situation throughout Iowa. Lots of plants and factories have closed. Lots of industrial operations have shut down. So we don't have nearly as many jobs for people to do, and therefore our unemployment rate is high. And so we have a lot of problems that come out of that because we just don't have as many opportunities as we had. And of course, tuition for schools is getting high now. And that fourth change is that we have a lot more students going to community colleges now because it is, they can't afford to go to Iowa State, Iowa, and UNI because of the costs.
What advice would you give to today's youth?
The first piece of advice I would give young people is that you are your own best cheerleader, and you have to believe that you can do anything that you want to do. Determination has gotten a lot of people places that they probably would not have gone without it. I remember not having the money to go to college, and I remember after I worked in the summer, I had enough money to get me through the first semester, and then I had to get money from my parents to go second semester. And my parents were saying, well, I don't know what we're gonna do, and I just said, I looked at my mom and my dad, and I said, go get the money because I'm not leaving college. And they did, they went and got it. And then after that first year, I just decided that it was up to me to get the money for my tuition. So I worked not only in the summer, I took a job at the college, and that was enough. They gave me enough money to pay my bills. And I was also able to get a loan, which I didn't know much about financial aid the first year. And after that, it was a piece of cake. And maybe take a role model. Look at somebody who does things that you do or that you would like to do, or people who are successful in terms of things that you would like to be successful at, and see how it is that they do what they do and what makes them successful. So maybe pick up a role model. And the last thing is always have faith in yourself, because ultimately it is you who determine what you become. Not a police officer, not your parents, not your brothers and sisters, it is you. It was my determination to go to school and become a teacher. My family did not believe that I was actually going to go to school and do it, but that was my determination to do that. And so I did.